threat building for possible Madagascar cyclone this weekend on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. Now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for January 14th. Still nothing that lays claim to the next name on any naming list right now around the world. It is still a flurry of disturbances that are active across the Pacific and Indian Oceans today. 2 storms so far this year, and more are surely on the way fairly soon, just a matter of when. In the Atlantic, it's 138 days until hurricane season begins, and right now there's a big front off the eastern coast of the United States and another one throwing precipitation towards Europe, but nothing tropical and certainly nothing expected. In the Pacific, the southern Pacific, there's an area of interest there that's up to 30% right now over the Solomon Islands towards Vanuatu. In the western Pacific, we're still looking at that disturbance that's really hammering the Philippines with more unwanted precipitation at this point. It's caused major extreme flooding in some places, 10% chance on that. And in the southwest Indian Ocean, we have now 2 moderate chances marked, and both expected to be moving towards the southwest eventually, but it now looks like the tables have turned, and it's the western system that now looks like it's going to be the dominant one. However, we can't discount the eastern one getting to tropical cyclone status, and so they both have 40% chances in the next 5 days. It looks like the western one, those chances will gradually increase further as we go through the weekend. Satellite imagery around the world in the last 24 hours looks like this. You can see the Philippines are still getting its fill of some red areas in that area, in that zone there. And elsewhere around the world there's been varying amounts across each coast of the United States, and some moving through towards the British Isles as well. Looking at the latest satellite imagery in the Western Pacific right now, although it's rather fuzzy and broken satellite imagery, but here is some imagery nonetheless of the Western Pacific, showing this disturbance which has not produced as much convection in the last few hours as it did previously. So that's some good news, and as a result the computer models are suggesting that the additional rainfall will not be quite as much as we were first thinking now. But we're probably still looking at 300 millimeters for some parts of southern Luzon, and also for the northern Visayas region and along the eastern shorelines as well. So more precipitation will continue along with gusty winds. Here's the southwest Indian Ocean right now, and still it's a bit of a blank canvas. There's not a huge amount going on here, but you can see where these systems may start to develop. The easterly one, which has had a lot more time on its hands in the last few days, you can see it towards the end of that loop, really getting some decent colouring moving in there, not far from the edge of the screen. Some of those oranges starting to appear a lot more readily in those later frames, and maybe just a little bit of a hook, possible rotation. And to the west, that other system that we're still waiting out for is still a fantasy on the models right now, you could say, but keep watching very closely. Those chances are rising. Also want to point out large amounts of precipitation over northern Madagascar there in the earlier part of today, and some of it continuing later into today as well. That's probably not going to be good news, as we're expecting a lot more precipitation to come from this upcoming event from these 2 systems, and it's still a very uncertain scenario with tracks uncertain and intensities, and it looks like the western system will be extremely broad when it does get going, so it's going to be a large area that we need to be watching out for headed towards Madagascar. Well, let's take a look around the world of sea surface temperatures on our whistle stop tour that we do every night. Look out for temperatures of 79 degrees or more, that's 26 Celsius, and that is decent enough conditions for tropical cyclone formation. Of course, it's not just sea surface temperatures that make a cyclone. The system itself has to be there in the first place, and it has to have good conditions with moisture and with wind shear. We're not really going to be getting that in the eastern Pacific or in the Atlantic right now. now, so let's go to the Indian Ocean. Temperatures up to around 27 degrees there. The southwest Indian Ocean even warmer. A big hot spot in the Mozambique Channel, 28 degrees minimum, I would say, probably more than that, and 27 degrees in the tropical zones of the southwest Indian Ocean. Out at sea, temperatures still decent in the lower latitudes. North Indian Ocean, for those concerned, 27 degrees there as well. Looks like the temperatures near Western Australia are bouncing back a little bit, and in the northern reaches of Australia, those temperatures are of course very warm indeed, 27 degrees at minimum, and towards Fiji 28 degrees generally. Very good conditions all around for sea surface temperatures in that entire zone. Western Pacific looking good as well at the low latitudes only, 82 Fahrenheit, that's 28 Celsius, and in the South China Sea, you never know with that area of interest, the temperatures there are still around 27. The anomalies, the Western Pacific is above average, and around the Australian region you've still got that cool pool there along the western coast, but it's not quite as strong as it was earlier, and it really feels like we're in the last throes of this La Nina now. It really looks like it's falling apart, especially when you look at a long-range animation. Can't show you one unfortunately right now, but I've seen it and it really has shown a dramatic decrease in strength. Looking at the South Pacific, the oceanic heat content is still quite decent there across the Solomon Islands, down to Vanuatu, down to Fiji and Samoa. Very good conditions in that tropical development zone, and it's actually increasing a little bit in the deep tropical West Pacific there, south of Guam. That orange zone has been expanding in the last couple of days, and around the Philippines as well. Those temperatures or the energy levels are increasing there too. Well, let's take a look at the GFS computer model then for the next 5 days. Here's the two systems. You saw the one on the right there, that little blue curl, but then the main system here, the western one, and there it is, becoming a hurricane equivalent storm within 5 days, probably on day 4, as it heads towards the northernmost part of Madagascar, moving southwestwards, becomes a very broad system actually, several hundred miles across there, that tropical storm force wind field. So that is coming up fairly soon now. South Pacific, looking out for potentially 3 different systems here, I think. One of them there, the main one through Vanuatu, that's the 30% system that gets quite strong near the end of that 5-day period, becomes a hurricane equivalent storm. And then look also towards the west near Australia towards the end of that 5-day period as well. Looks like the development of another cyclone possible. I'm sure some of you have been noticing that for a while, but still very uncertain. Let's take a look at the precipitation estimates for Madagascar right now over the next 7 days this is, and you'll see the influence coming in from that tropical cyclone as it really starts to develop, and look at those colors really start to take a big notch upwards, and you can almost make out the track of the storm there through northern Madagascar along the coast. And at the moment we're expecting possibly 300 to 400 millimeters of rainfall along those coastal areas, particularly along that northwestern coast. That's just a projection at the moment, but it is going to get more concrete as time goes on, and the forecasts are getting better as we get closer. In the moderate range, this is what happens to the system on day 5 through 10. There it is, moving southwestwards, and it starts to die off quite a bit, but some of its energy transferring eastwards into a big frontal system, and out of that spawning another large tropical cyclone there east of the Mascarene Islands. Still seems far-fetched to me that something like that will happen, but you never know, it might happen. I've certainly seen that projected by models before, but I wouldn't put anything on that right now, but certainly a strong second storm there that almost reaches hurricane status. What happens to these South Pacific systems? The first one, hurricane equivalent, moves southwards. The second one strengthens tight core near New Caledonia and moves southwards. And then 2 systems either side of it, one that develops out of almost nothing, some of this first cyclone's energy perhaps, or actually from near Fiji by the looks of things. And then that next system near Australia, there's that other one there, a weak tropical storm, and starts to move towards the west, back towards the Cape York Peninsula. But that's extremely long long range, and we'll have to wait and see. Scan the barcode and take a look at the Force 13 merch store, where we have all of our usual items, including our, obviously, merch. There it is, our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirt, and full season and individual storm animations on request. In the Scilly range then, this is day 10 through 16. Both of these cyclones still active, coexisting there. Look at that, either side of Madagascar. And the first one gets towards hurricane equivalent status again there, so it really does have a second life. And that second system much broader. Look at this, little and large there, moving towards the southeast, well out towards the extratropical zones. And they do end up dying off, but the whole western coast of Madagascar could be in for that. And that would take, what's that? The 27th, 28th of January that it leaves, considering that it's going to get there in 5 days. That's a long time to be under the influence of that storm if it happens anything like that forecast. Australian region, that cyclone that was moving into the Cape York Peninsula, there it is, moving across northern Australia with tropical storm force winds, a remnant by then, and nothing happens on the other side, on the Indian Ocean side there. Just watch it again there, moving inland, possibly another weak tropical cyclone near the Indonesian islands as well. So an interesting period there around the Australian region. Of course, that's very long range, so I wouldn't really expect anything yet. And at this point in time, I'd like to point out the Discord server for live tropical weather chat and weather of all kinds around the world. Discord.gg/Force13 to chat live with over 3,000 other weather watchers. Well then, on this day, on January 14th, 1982, look at this, a line of storms, but only one is what people really remember. Cyclone Chris Damia, which trekked across the southwest Indian Ocean and probably reached Category 5 status. There it is, near its peak, which occurred on this day. It had a fantastic looking eye with a red ring around it on the infrared satellite imagery. I think it may have been missed, the true peak of this storm, due to poor satellite imagery at the time. All we really had was the polar orbiting satellites at this moment, so I think it could have been even stronger than that, but we'll never know. Well then, today, back to this year, the first name on the Atlantic naming list this year is Arlene. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Adrian, and in the Central Pacific, it is Hone. Will we ever get it? Maybe not, but we'll try. We'll really try and have Hone this year. Who knows whether we'll be able to manage that or not. The Western Pacific's next name is Sanvu, and in the North Indian Ocean it's Mocha. Who knows when the Western Pacific one might pipe up, but the next storm will be number 3 for this year if you count Ellie's second stint. In the Australian region, Freddie's next up, the Southwest Indian Ocean, Chiniso, and in the South Pacific it's Irene. That's all from us tonight. We'll be back with another tropical weather bulletin tomorrow night.